June sighed. Uncle Tahoe had always been eccentric, but this was unusual even for him. After disappearing 15 years ago, when his experimental aircraft vanished over the Pacific, most of the family had accepted he was dead. June had been only 12 then, but he remembered his uncle's wild stories and brilliant mind. "What kind of debt?" June asked. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. He didn't specify. He only said it was substantial, and that you were the sole beneficiary. June tucked the cube and envelope into his jacket pocket. His accounting job could spare him for a few days, and his curiosity was stronger than his skepticism. Maybe Tahoe had stashed away some valuable patents or research materials. 3 days later, June's old sedan bumped along a dirt road in the Montana wilderness. The GPS signal had died an hour back, forcing him to navigate by the printed map. The tall pines crowded the narrow road, and the late afternoon shadows made everything look mysterious. "This better be worth it, Uncle Tahoe," June muttered as he finally spotted a small wooden cabin nestled in a clearing ahead. The cabin looked ordinary: weathered logs, a stone chimney, a small porch with a rocking chair. June checked the coordinates again. This was definitely the place. He approached cautiously, the metal cube growing strangely warm in his pocket. A note had been tacked to the door. Asterisk placed the key against the lock. "Remember what I taught you, June. The universe is bigger than you know." Asterisk. June pulled out the cube. Key. It didn't look like any key he'd ever seen. Still, he pressed it against the door's simple lock. The cube melted into the wood, spreading like liquid metal. June jumped back as blue light rippled across the cabin's exterior. The wooden walls shimmered and dissolved, revealing a sleek metallic structure underneath. The transformation happened in seconds. The rustic cabin was gone, replaced by what looked like something from a science fiction movie. "What the hell?" June whispered. The door slid open silently, and cool air rushed out. Inside, soft blue lights activated automatically, revealing a space much larger than the cabin had appeared from outside. The walls were lined with technology unlike anything June had ever seen. Screens showing star charts, containers with strange specimens, and tools that defied description. "Hello, June," said a familiar voice. June spun around to see a hologram materializing in the center of the room. His Uncle Tahoe, looking exactly as June remembered him, but older. The image flickered slightly. "If you're seeing this, I'm no longer alive. I've programmed this message to activate when you, and only you, entered this facility." The hologram smiled sadly. "I'm sorry for disappearing from your life. What happened to me was unexpected." June moved closer to the hologram, his heart racing. 15 years ago, my aircraft didn't crash into the ocean," Tahoe continued. "I was caught in the crossfire of something happening beyond Earth's atmosphere. Something saved me. Someone saved me." The hologram waved its hand, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was what looked like a glass coffin filled with a luminous blue liquid. And floating in that liquid was a humanoid figure with iridescent blue skin. "Her name is Yuna," Tahoe said. "She's a princess from a civilization spanning 13 star systems. She rescued me from certain death, but in doing so, her ship was damaged, and we crashed here on Earth. I've spent 15 years protecting her, repairing her ship, and keeping her existence secret." June approached the chamber cautiously. The being inside looked almost human, except for her blue skin and the fact that she had 4 eyes, currently closed as if in peaceful sleep. "She's in stasis," Tahoe explained. "Her enemies are searching for her. Her uncle staged a coup, killed her father, and wants her dead to secure his claim to the throne. The debt I mentioned, June, is a life debt. In her culture, when someone saves your life, you owe them a life debt that can be passed on to your kin if you die before it's repaid." June placed his hand against the glass. "You're telling me I've inherited an alien princess. She needs your help, June. The coordinates to repair facilities are in the ship's computer. There are others loyal to her out there. This facility contains everything you need. The ship is beneath us. The technology to help her is all around you. Tahoe's hologram looked suddenly sad. I'm sorry to place this burden on you, but you were always the one person I could trust. You have a choice. You can walk away now. The stasis will hold for another year before failing, or you can press your hand against the panel by her chamber and accept the life debt. June stood frozen, trying to process everything. His ordinary life as an accountant seemed a million miles away now. One more thing, Tahoe added. Once you wake her, her uncle's forces will likely detect her life signature. You'll need to move quickly. The hologram flickered and faded. June was left alone with an impossible decision. After 15 minutes of pacing and muttering to himself, he approached the stasis chamber. A small panel glowed beside it. I must be crazy, he whispered, pressing his palm against it. The chamber hummed to life. The blue liquid drained away, and the glass retracted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then all four of Yumha's eyes opened at once, glowing silver in the dim light. She sat up smoothly, her movements graceful despite having been in stasis. She looked directly at June, her head tilting slightly. You are not Tahoe, she said, her voice musical and strange. No, I'm his nephew, June. Tahoe was gone. Yumha stood, towering over him at nearly 7 feet tall. Her skin shimmered with patterns that seemed to shift like oil on water. Then the life debt transfers to you, she said solemnly. I am bound to you until it is repaid. Before June could respond, an alarm blared from one of the consoles. Yumha moved with startling speed to the screens displaying the outside of the facility. They found us already, she said, her voice tight. We need to leave immediately. Who's found us? June asked, panic rising in his chest. Hunters sent by my uncle. Yumha turned to face him, her 4 eyes narrowing. How quickly can you learn to pilot a spacecraft? June stared at Yumha, her question about piloting a spacecraft hanging in the air between them. Outside, something large descended from the sky, causing the entire structure to vibrate. I can barely drive a stick shift, June admitted. How much time do we have? Minutes, Yumha replied, moving swiftly to a control panel. Her long blue fingers danced across symbols that lit up at her touch. The hunters have tracking technology that can detect my biological signature. They'd been searching this sector for years. The floor beneath them suddenly split open, revealing the steep staircase spiraling down into darkness. Lights activated automatically as Yumha started down the steps. Grab that bag, she instructed, pointing to a black duffel on a nearby table. Your uncle prepared emergency supplies. June snatched the bag and followed her down the stairs, his heart pounding. The walls around them were no longer the rustic cabin but smooth metal with strange flowing patterns. At the bottom of the staircase, June stopped abruptly, his mouth falling open. They stood in an enormous underground hangar that seemed impossible given the size of the cabin above. Dominating the space was what could only be described as a spaceship, sleek and silver, roughly the size of a small yacht, with no visible windows and an unusual triangular shape. This is your uncle's greatest achievement, Yumha said with something like respect in her voice. He combined your human technology with salvaged parts from my vessel. It's not as advanced as my royal transport, but it will outrun the hunters. A deep rumbling sound came from above, followed by crashing noises. Dust fell from the ceiling. They're breaking through the outer defenses, Yumha said, pressing her palm against the ship's hull. A doorway materialized, sliding open to reveal the interior. We need to leave now. June hesitated for only a second before following her inside. The ship's interior was surprisingly spacious, with what appeared to be a control room at the front, living quarters visible through a doorway, and various compartments along the walls. Sit there, Yumha directed, pointing to a chair with harnesses beside the pilot's seat. Your uncle modified the controls for human physiology. I can operate most systems, but the neural interface was calibrated for your family's genetic signature. As June strapped himself in, Yunha's four eyes focused intensely on the control panels. The ship hummed to life around them, displays lighting up with information June couldn't begin to understand. Place your hands on the blue pads, she instructed. Think about lifting, about rising. The ship will interpret your intent. You're kidding, right? June asked incredulously. A thunderous boom shook the hangar. Through the ship's external cameras, June could see part of the ceiling collapse as something massive broke through. Creatures in dark armor dropped into the hangar, carrying weapons that glowed with ominous red energy. Not kidding, Yunha said sharply. Focus, June. Swallowing his fear, June placed his hands on the glowing blue pads and closed his eyes. He thought about rising, about floating, about escaping. To his shock, he felt a tingling sensation run from the pads up his arms and into his mind. The ship responded immediately, lifting smoothly off the ground. Good, Yunha said, her fingers working rapidly over other controls. Now the roof. On one of the screens, Jum saw the armored creatures pointing at the ship, raising their weapons. Energy blasts struck the ship's hull but seemed to dissipate across a barely visible shield. Uncle Tahoe thought of everything, June muttered. He was brilliant for a human, Yunha agreed. Now focus on the roof opening. June looked up and was surprised to see that the hangar roof had a large circular section that appeared different from the rest. He concentrated on it opening, and again the ship responded. The circle split apart like a camera aperture, revealing the night sky above. The hunters fired more frantically now. One blast struck close to the ship's propulsion system, causing alarms to sound throughout the cockpit. Ascend. Quickly, Yunha urged. June focused harder than he ever had in his life, imagining the ship shooting up through the opening like a bullet from a gun. The vessel responded with startling acceleration, pressing them back into their seats as it rocketed upward into the night sky. Keep going. Straight up through the atmosphere, Yunha commanded, her hands flying over control panels, stabilizing their ascent. The ship shuddered as they broke through clouds, the external temperature readings climbing rapidly on the displays. June felt sweat beading on his forehead, partly from concentration and partly from fear. They're following, Yunha reported tensely, watching a rear display that showed 3 smaller craft rising from the Montana wilderness in pursuit. Their ships are faster but less armored. We need to reach orbit before they catch us. The vibrations increased as they hit the upper atmosphere, the ship's hull glowing red from the friction. Warning lights flashed across several panels. Your uncle never tested this ship at these speeds, Yunha explained, making rapid adjustments. The theoretical models were sound, but a violent shudder cut her off as something struck the rear of the ship. Alarms blared, and one of the displays showed damage to the propulsion system. They're firing long-range weapons, she said grimly. June felt panic rising, but forced himself to focus. What do we do now? Yunha's 4 eyes narrowed in determination. We need to exit atmosphere and then jump to FTL. FTL, as in faster than light. June asked incredulously. Your uncle adapted the salvage drive from my ship. It won't take us far, perhaps to your moon, but it will be enough to lose the hunters temporarily. Another hit rocked the ship. This time, the lights flickered momentarily. We're almost through the atmosphere, Yunha said. Prepare for FTL. Think about a sudden forward rush, like diving into water. The ship broke free of Earth's atmosphere, the vibrations ceasing as they entered the silence of space. Through the view screens, Jum could see the blackness of space and the curve of Earth below them. It was breathtaking, but he had no time to appreciate it as the pursuing ships closed in rapidly. Now, June, Yunha shouted. June thought about diving forward, about surging ahead faster than thought. The ship responded, the stars on the view screen stretching into lines as reality itself seemed to bend around them. There was a moment of crushing pressure, then a bizarre sensation of being everywhere and nowhere at once. And then, suddenly, Earth was gone. The moon loomed large in their view screens. We made it, Yunha said, her voice filled with relief. Your first FTL jump. Impressive for a human. June released his grip on the control pads, his hands shaking. So, what happens now? Yunha turned all four of her silver eyes toward him. Now we prepare. The hunters will track us eventually. We need supplies, weapons, and allies. She paused. And you need to learn what it means to hold a royal life debt in the collective. I still don't understand this life debt thing, June admitted. It means I am bound to you until I consider the debt repaid. Yunha explained. It is our most sacred tradition. It also means that by the laws of my people, you now have claim to royal protection. Her expression grew serious. But it also means my uncle will hunt you as relentlessly as he hunts me. June looked out at the unfamiliar view of space, at the damaged ship that was now his only sanctuary, and at the alien princess who had just turned his world upside down. All this because I decided to claim a debt, he said with a weak laugh. Yuna's facial markings shifted in what might have been a smile. Your uncle once said humans are remarkably adaptable. I hope he was right. The ship drifted silently in the shadow of a large asteroid. Engines powered down to minimize detection. Inside, June watched as Yunha repaired a damaged panel, her four-fingered hands manipulating tools that seemed to phase through solid metal. 3 days had passed since their narrow escape from Earth, and June was still struggling to accept his new reality. So your uncle killed your father, took his throne, and now wants you dead too? June asked, trying to organize the complicated story Yunha had been sharing in pieces. Yes, Yunha replied without looking up from her work. My Uncle Day rules 13 star systems now. He wants to expand our empire into new territories, including your solar system. She paused, her silver eyes meeting June's. My father believed young species should develop without interference. Your world was under his protection. June leaned against the wall, feeling the gentle hum of the ship's systems through his back. And now Earth has no protection. Not officially, Yuna confirmed. Though my loyalists maintain a hidden network, your Uncle Tahoe was part of it. This revelation stunned June. Wait, Tahoe was working with aliens. For how long? After I rescued him, he learned quickly about galactic politics. He understood the danger to Earth if my uncle succeeded. Yunha set down her tools and closed the panel she'd been repairing. Your uncle was remarkable. He combined your primitive technology with pieces of my damaged ship to create this vessel. June frowned at the word primitive, but let it pass. After all, humanity hadn't even reached Mars yet, while Yunha's people traveled between stars. Where are we headed now? He asked instead. The outpost at Europa, Jupiter's moon, Yunha clarified when she saw his confusion. We've maintained a small research base there for centuries. It's one of the few places in your system my uncle doesn't yet control. A warning light blinked on the control panel. Yunha moved swiftly to check it, her movements fluid and graceful despite the ship's artificial gravity. Patrol ships, she said tersely. 2 of them, moving through the asteroid belt. June joined her at the viewport. In the distance, he could see faint lights moving methodically through the field of rocks. Can they detect us? Not if we remain powered down. Your uncle's modifications included exceptional stealth systems. She studied the ship's movement pattern. They're searching in a standard grid pattern. They know we're somewhere in this region. June's stomach growled loudly in the quiet ship. He hadn't eaten in hours, too fascinated by watching Yunha work. She glanced at him, the patterns on her blue skin shifting slightly in what he was beginning to recognize as amusement. You should eat, she said. The food synthesizer is functional again. Is that what that machine is? June moved to the device that looked like a cross between a microwave and a 3D printer. I thought it might be a weapon. It can create simple nutrients based on your biological needs, Yunha explained. Press your palm against the scanner. June did as instructed. The machine hummed, then produced a small bowl of what looked like colorful rice and vegetables. He tasted it cautiously. It's actually good, he said, surprised. Tastes like bibimbap, but better somehow. The machine reads your nutritional needs and taste preferences directly from your biosignature, Yunha explained. Your uncle added Earth flavor profiles to the database. As June ate, he watched Yunha monitoring the patrol ships. They seemed to be moving closer to the asteroid where they were hiding. Tell me more about this life debt, he said between bites. What exactly does it mean for me? For us. Yunha turned from the monitors. In my culture, saving a life creates a sacred bond. The saved person owes their life to their rescuer until they consider the debt repaid. And your debt transferred to me because I'm Tahoe's closest relative. Yes, the debt follows bloodlines if the original holder dies before it's repaid. She hesitated. It's more than just tradition. It's biochemical for my species. I am literally bound to you until I deem the debt fulfilled. So you're basically my servant? June asked, uncomfortable with the idea. Yunha's skin patterns darkened, a sign of emotion, though June couldn't yet interpret which one. Not a servant, a protector, an ally, a companion. The relationship is complex. I retain my free will, but I am compelled to ensure your welfare. She moved closer to him. And because I am royal blood, the debt extends significant protection to you under collective law. You now have diplomatic status equivalent to a minor royal. So even your uncle can't just kill me. Not openly. No, it would violate our most sacred laws. Her expression grew serious, which is why he will try to make your death look accidental. On the monitors, the patrol ships began to drift away, continuing their search pattern in another sector. Both June and Yunha exhaled in relief. We should reach Europa in 14 hours, Yunha said, activating the engines at minimal power. Once there, we can access better resources and contact my loyalists in other systems. June finished his food, lost in thought. 3 days ago, he'd been an accountant with a small apartment and a cat that his neighbor was now probably wondering about. Now he was a fugitive in space with an alien princess who was biochemically bound to him. Can I ask you something personal? He ventured. Yunha tilted her head, waiting. Do you miss your home? The question seemed to catch her off guard. The patterns on her skin rippled softly. Every day, she finally answered. I was to be crowned empress on my next birthday. My father had prepared me since childhood to lead our people toward peace and scientific advancement. Her 4 eyes lowered. Instead, my uncle has turned our empire toward conquest and exploitation. For the first time, June saw beyond the alien features and recognized something deeply familiar. Grief, determination, and homesickness. We'll find a way to fix this, he said with more confidence than he felt. Get you back home and set things right. Yunha studied him curiously. Your uncle said humans were remarkably optimistic despite your short lifespans. I see he was correct. A sudden alarm blared through the ship. One of the patrol vessels had changed course and was heading directly toward them. They've detected our engine signature, Yunha said, hands flying over the controls. We need to move now. June rushed to the neural interface, placing his hands on the blue pads as Yunha had taught him. The connection formed instantly, the ship responding to his thoughts as he imagined darting between asteroids. Good, Yunha approved as they weaved through the field. You're learning quickly. The patrol ship fired, a blast of energy skimming past them and vaporizing a nearby asteroid. Can we jump to FTL? June asked. Not from inside the asteroid field. Too dangerous. Yunha activated the weapons systems. We need to reach clear space first. The patrol ship gained on them, firing again. This time, the blast struck their rear shields, causing the ship to shudder violently. Shields at 60%, Yunha reported. One more direct hit and they'll fail. June concentrated harder, seeking a path through the dense field. Ahead, he spotted a gap between larger asteroids. There, he shouted, if we can get through that gap. Yunha understood immediately. Do it. The ship responded to June's mental command. accelerating toward the narrow opening. A patrol vessel followed, still firing. They slipped through the gap just as a massive asteroid tumbled across the path behind them, blocking the shot that would have disabled their shields. "We're clear of the field," Yunha announced, preparing for FTL jump. The patrol ship emerged from a different route, still in pursuit but now joined by its partner. Ready for jump in 3, 2. A blast struck their ship directly, knocking out the main power. Emergency lights kicked on as systems failed around them. "FTL is offline," Yunha said grimly. "We need to find another way." June looked at the approaching patrol ships, then at the distant shape of Jupiter looming ahead. "What about Jupiter's gravity?" he suggested. "Could we use it like a slingshot to gain speed?" Yunha's eyes widened. "A gravity assist?" "Yes, risky but possible." Her fingers danced across the remaining functional controls. "If we time it perfectly, we could accelerate enough to reach Europa before they catch us." Another blast rocked the ship as June set course for the gas giant. They were outgunned and damaged, but not yet defeated. As Jupiter grew larger in their view screen, June exchanged a determined look with Yunha. Their unlikely partnership was about to face its greatest test yet. The massive royal destroyer pulled June and Yunha's small ship slowly into its docking bay. Their desperate gambit using Jupiter's gravity had gotten them to Europa, but they'd been intercepted just before reaching the hidden base. Now their damaged vessel sat helpless in the tractor beam of Commander Q's flagship. "They'll kill you immediately," Yunha said, her voice tight with fear as they watched armored guards forming a perimeter around their landing zone. "Humans have no protected status under collective law." June peered at the guards through the view screen. They were tall, heavily armored figures with insect-like features, mandibles clicking as they communicated. Each carried weapons that pulsed with energy. "Your uncle thinks you're alone, right?" June asked suddenly. "That gives us one advantage: surprise." Yunha looked at him questioningly. "What are you thinking?" "Something my Uncle Tahoe always said. Sometimes being underestimated is your greatest weapon." June's mind raced as he formed a desperate plan. "Do you have that phase shift thing you mentioned?" "The personal phase generator. Yes, but it only works for my biology." Yunha pulled a small disk from a hidden compartment. "It will let me move through solid matter undetected for about 20 minutes before needing recharge." "Perfect." June nodded toward the waiting guards. "They expect you to be the threat. They have no idea what humans are capable of." As their ship settled onto the docking bay floor, June quickly explained his plan. Yunha's eyes widened. "That's incredibly dangerous," she protested. "But they won't expect it," June countered. "Sometimes the best move is the most obvious one." Before Yunha could argue further, June triggered the airlock. The door hissed open, and he stepped out with his hands raised high above his head. Immediately, a dozen weapons locked onto him. "Please don't hurt me," June cried, dropping to his knees and making his body shake visibly. "I'm just a human. She kidnapped me. I didn't want any part of this." The guards hesitated, mandibles clicking rapidly in confusion. Behind June, Yunha activated the phase generator and slipped invisibly through the floor of the ship, exactly as planned. A larger figure pushed through the guards. Commander Q was nearly 12 feet tall, his chitness exoskeleton decorated with ceremonial scarring and rank insignia. His 4 arms held different weapons, and his compound eyes glittered menacingly. "Where is the princess?" Q demanded, his translator rendering his clicks into harsh-sounding words. "She's still inside," June blubbered, pointing back at the ship with a trembling finger. "She said something about a self-destruct sequence if anyone tried to take her. I'm just an accountant from Earth. I don't want to die in space." Q signaled to his guards, who rushed toward the ship, leaving June seemingly forgotten on the docking bay floor. While they searched the empty vessel, June slowly reached for a fallen communication device that one of the guards had dropped in their haste. With practiced movements that came from years of gaming, June's fingers found the sequence Yunha had taught him during their journey. It wasn't much, just an emergency override frequency that would cause momentary system conflicts throughout the destroyer. Throughout the massive ship, systems began to fail. Lights flickered, doors sealed or opened randomly. Alarms blared in different sections, creating confusion and panic among the crew. Q whirled back to face Jun, his mandibles clacking in fury. "What is happening?" Jun shrugged innocently. "I'm just an accountant. But you know what they say about humans." "What do they say?" Q loomed over him menacingly. Jun smiled. "We're really good at causing chaos." Meanwhile, Yunhe was moving unseen through the destroyer's lower decks, her knowledge of ship design guiding her toward the engine control room. Years ago, Tahoe had theorized that all collective vessels shared certain design vulnerabilities, backdoors that could be exploited in emergencies. He had been right. Using the small toolkit hidden in her clothing, Yunhe accessed the main control panel and initiated a series of commands that Tahoe had designed specifically for this purpose. The ship's internal communication system suddenly activated, and to her surprise, Jun's voice came through every speaker. "This is Jung Kim of Earth," he announced, sounding remarkably calm and authoritative now. "I believe you're all familiar with the concept of a life debt in your culture. Well, I've claimed Princess Yuna's debt, which means by your own laws, attacking me is equivalent to attacking royal blood." In the docking bay, Q froze, his compound eyes fixed on Jun in disbelief. "You lie," he hissed. "No human could hold a royal life debt." Jun stood taller now, his earlier fear completely gone. "Check your records. Princess Yunhe of the Collective was rescued by Tahoe Kim 15 years ago. Upon his death, the life debt transferred to me, his nearest blood relative. According to Section 12 of your sacred law of debts, harming me would violate your most fundamental cultural principles." Q tapped rapidly at a device on his arm, his mandibles clicking in agitation as he verified the claim. His posture changed visibly as he read the results. "This is unprecedented," he finally admitted. Throughout the ship, systems began returning to normal as Yunhe completed her work in the engine room. Using Tahoe's modifications, she had locked all critical commands with a biometric key that only she or Jun could override. "Now," Jun continued, his voice still broadcasting throughout the destroyer, "we could have a diplomatic incident that would embarrass your usurper king, or we could come to an arrangement." "What arrangement?" Q demanded, his earlier confidence clearly shaken. "Safe passage to the Proxima Centauri outpost, where neutral authorities can verify my claim." Jun was making this up as he went along, based on fragments of information Yunhe had shared during their journey. Once there, Princess Yunhe can formally register her survival and my protected status under collective law. The guards who had been searching the ship returned, reporting that it was empty. Q's confusion was evident even through his alien features. "Where is the princess?" he asked again. At that moment, Yunhe stepped through a solid wall into the docking bay, the phase generator's effect wearing off just as she appeared. The guards jumped back in shock, weapons raised. "I am here, Commander Q," she said regally. "And my debt holder has spoken our terms." Q's mandibles clicked rapidly as he assessed the situation. His orders were to capture or kill the princess, but interfering with a life debt, especially a royal one, was taboo even for those loyal to the usurper. "This changes nothing," Q finally said. "My loyalty is to Emperor Da." "Your loyalty should be to collective law first," Yuma countered. "Or has my uncle abandoned even that pretense?" The commander's hesitation was all Jun needed. He pressed another sequence on the stolen communication device, and suddenly all weapon systems on the destroyer powered down. "We've locked out your weapons and navigation systems," Jun bluffed, having no idea what Yuna had actually accomplished. "They'll remain that way until we reach Proxima Centauri safely." Yunha moved to stand beside Jun, her 4 silver eyes fixed on Q. "My debt holder has shown wisdom beyond his years, Commander. You are bound by law to honor his protection, regardless of your loyalty to my uncle. For several tense moments, the docking bay was silent except for the clicking of mandibles as the guards awaited Q's decision. Finally, the commander lowered his weapons. "We will transport you to Proxima Centauri," he conceded grudgingly. "But know this, once your claim is verified, you will have only the minimal protection required by law. Nothing more." June and Yuna exchanged looks of cautious triumph. It wasn't victory, but it was survival, and a crucial first step toward gathering the allies they would need. "I accept your terms, Commander," June said formally, remembering the diplomatic phrases Yuna had taught him. "May honor guide your path." As they were escorted to secure quarters aboard the destroyer, Yunho whispered to June, "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen a human do." June smiled slightly. "Maybe it's both. Isn't that why Tahoe trusted me with you in the first place?" For the first time since they'd met, Yunha's skin patterns formed what June recognized as a genuine smile. "Perhaps humans have more potential than we realized." June stood at the massive view screen on the observation deck of the royal palace, staring out at the 3 moons hanging in the purple-gold sky of Siren Prime. 6 months had passed since their daring escape from Commander Q's destroyer, 6 months that had transformed him from an ordinary accountant into something far more extraordinary. "Still admiring the view?" Yuna asked, entering the chamber quietly. June turned and found himself momentarily breathless at the sight of her. Dressed in the formal attire of her position, she gleamed with an inner light that made her blue skin shimmer. The royal markings on her face and arms pulsed gently, displaying her lineage and right to rule for all to see. "I don't think I'll ever get tired of it," June admitted. 6 months ago, I was filing tax returns in a tiny apartment. Now I'm helping restore an alien monarchy." He adjusted the ceremonial robes that still felt strange on his shoulders, the robes that marked him as the princess's champion, a position created specifically for him. Their journey from Proxima Centauri to the heart of the collective had been filled with danger and unexpected allies. The verification of June's life debt claim had sent shockwaves through the 13 systems. Many who had believed Princess Yumed dead rallied to her cause when news spread of her survival. The resistance forces that had been operating in secret gained strength and legitimacy with each passing day. "The Council has finally agreed to the Tahoe Directive," Yumha said, joining him at the view screen. "Earth will be granted protected status and autonomy. No collective vessel may enter your solar system without permission." June smiled. "My uncle would be proud, though I doubt he ever imagined having an interstellar policy named after him." Below them, in the vast plaza surrounding the palace, thousands of citizens gathered. Word had spread that tonight, after 6 months of fighting and political maneuvering, Princess Yuna would finally be crowned Empress of the Collective. Her uncle Dai had been captured 3 weeks earlier, attempting to flee to the outer systems after his forces suffered decisive defeats on multiple fronts. "You know," June said thoughtfully, "when I first placed that cube against the cabin door, I thought I was just claiming a debt my uncle left behind." "And instead?" Yuna prompted. "Instead, I found a princess, several galaxies worth of adventure, and something I never had on Earth." "What's that?" "A place where I truly belong." June turned from the view to face her fully. "But there's still one thing I don't understand. This life debt. You said it remains until you consider it repaid. After everything that's happened, surely it must be balanced by now." Yunha stepped closer, the patterns on her skin shifting to display emotions that June had learned to read over their months together. "The life debt is repaid when the debtor decides it is repaid," she said softly. "A convenient tradition, is it not?" "Very," June agreed with a small smile. "But eventually. My council has suggested that a permanent human ambassador would benefit relations between our peoples," Yunha interrupted. "Someone who understands both worlds. Someone trusted by the Empress herself." "Is that a job offer, Your Highness?" June asked, using the formal title that would soon change to Your Majesty. "It is an acknowledgement of reality," Yunha replied. The humans who saved our civilization, first Teo, then you, deserve a permanent voice in our affairs. A soft chime sounded, indicating that the coronation ceremony would begin soon. Attendants appeared at the chamber doors, waiting respectfully for their princess. Besides, Yumna continued, her 4 silver eyes meeting June's gaze, our scientists have developed treatments that can extend human lifespans considerably. The life debt might take centuries to fully repay. June laughed. Are you saying you're stuck with me for a few hundred years? I am saying, Yunhe replied with unusual directness, that the champion of the Empress has certain privileges, including the right to remain at her side for as long as both parties wish it. Before June could respond, the Grand Minister entered the chamber and bowed deeply. Your Highness, it is time, the minister announced. The assembly of systems awaits. Yunhe nodded regally. We come. As they walked toward the great hall where the coronation would take place, Jun marveled at how comfortable he had become in this alien world. The strange foods no longer seemed strange. The complex protocols of court life had become second nature. Even the gravity, slightly lighter than Earth's, now felt normal to his body. The massive doors to the great assembly hall opened before them. Thousands of representatives from across the 13 systems stood in tiered seating, their diverse forms representing the multitude of species that comprised the collective. At the center stood the ancient coronation dais, where every ruler since the founding of the collective had been crowned. As Yunhe walked toward her destiny, June followed a few steps behind, the traditional position for the champion. He caught fragments of whispered conversations among the assembled dignitaries. The humans saved her, defeated the usurper's fleet with primitive tactics. They say he holds her life debt. June kept his expression neutral, as he had been taught, but inside, he couldn't help feeling a surge of pride, not just for himself, but for humanity. In the vastness of space, among civilizations thousands of years more advanced than Earth, humans had still found a way to make a difference. The coronation ceremony began with ancient words in the original Cyrene language. Yunhe knelt before the high priestess, who placed the living crown, a circlet of luminous material that bonded with the wearer, upon her head. Rise, Empress Yunhe, ruler of the 13 systems, protector of the collective, the priestess proclaimed. As Yunhe rose, her gaze found June's in the crowd. The patterns on her skin formed a message only he could read, one she had taught him during their long journey across the stars. Together, the pattern said simply. The new empress turned to address her subjects, but her first words surprised everyone except June. My first act as empress is to announce the Tahoe Directive, she declared, her voice carrying through the vast hall. Earth and its solar system are henceforth under the protection of the collective. No interference in human development will be permitted. And to ensure this directive is honored, I name Jum Kim as Earth's first ambassador to the collective, with full diplomatic privileges and authority. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, but none dared challenge the Empress's first decree. June stepped forward as protocol required, kneeling before Yunhe to accept the appointment. Ambassador Kim, she said formally, do you accept this sacred duty to serve as bridge between your world and ours? June looked up at the alien princess he had helped restore to her rightful place, the being who had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined when he first drove to that cabin in Montana. I do, Your Majesty, he replied, with honor and gratitude. As the 3 sons of Saturn Prime began their spectacular sunset, casting the alien world in brilliant purple and gold, Jum Kim, former accountant, now interstellar diplomat, stood beside the newly crowned Empress Yunhe, ready to begin the next chapter of their extraordinary journey together. In that moment, he could almost feel his uncle Tayo watching with approval from wherever adventurous spirits go when their earthly journeys end. The debt had been claimed, but what June had received in return was beyond anything he could have ever imagined.